I opened my eyes to the monotonous sound of rain pounding on the roof. Outside my house, the gray Kannapolis morning was diluting the fall colors into watercolors. November was cold and dank, which is not surprising for North Carolina this time of year. My name is Emma Holloway. I'm 77 years old, and I live alone in the house we once bought with Ray, my late husband. 20 years since he's been gone, and sometimes it seems like just yesterday he was sitting on the porch in his favorite rocking chair. Now that chair sits in the corner of the living room, I can't bring myself to sit in it, but I don't dare take it away either. I reached for my glasses on the bedside table. They were where I'd left them, neatly folded next to the Donna Tartt book I'd been trying to read for the third week. Next to it was my cell phone, an expensive big screen phone, a gift from my son last Christmas. "So you'll always be in touch, Mom," Thorne had said then. It sounded thoughtful, but I understood the real reason. It made it easier for them to control me without taking time away from their business. Thorne, my only son, lived with his family 15 minutes away from me, in a new neighborhood in Kannapolis. A successful dentist with his own clinic, he had married Lavinia Ross 23 years ago. Back then, she had been an assistant in his office, young and ambitious. Now Lavinia ran a chain of beauty salons, her own business that she had started with a small hair salon and now had 3 locations throughout the city. They had 2 children, Audrey, 19, a student at a prestigious college in Charlotte, and Edwin, 16, a high school student addicted to computer games. I pulled on a warm robe and headed for the kitchen. There was yesterday's coffee waiting for me, which only needed to be reheated. My daily routine was simple and predictable. Breakfast, reading, a walk around the neighborhood, weather permitting, lunch, TV or a book, another walk, dinner, another book or TV, sleep. Ray always said I think too much. Perhaps that's true. In the quiet of my own home, I had plenty of time to think. I sat down at the kitchen table and looked out the window at the dreary landscape. The neighbor's cat was trying to escape the rain under a hedge. Poor thing, I'd let him in the house, but I'm allergic. The phone on the table vibrated and I saw Thorne's name on the screen. Strange. He rarely called in the morning. "Mom? Are you awake yet?" His voice sounded businesslike as usual. "Yes, Thorne, of course. Is something wrong?" No, I just wanted to let you know I can't come by today to fix your bathroom faucet. Edwin has a competition and I promised I'd drive him." I sighed. Thorne had promised to come over and fix the leaky faucet 2 weeks ago. Every time there was a reason for the delay. "That's okay," I said. "I'll call a plumber. Why waste money? I'll stop by, maybe Sunday if nothing comes up." "Okay, honey." I knew he wasn't coming, but there was no point in arguing. "Oh, and one more thing. Could you keep an eye on the house next week? Lavinia and I are going to a conference in New York for 4 days. That's it. They need something." "Sure," I replied. "What about the kids?" "Audrey is in college, and Edwin will come with us. It'll be good for him to see New York." "I'll watch the house, don't worry." "Thanks, Mom. You're the best. I'll get the keys." He disconnected without saying goodbye as usual. I sighed again and sipped my coffee, which was already getting cold. It wasn't that Thorne was a bad son. He wasn't abusive or violent, just indifferent. He did his filial duty, calling once a week, stopping by once a month, inviting her to all the family holidays. But there was no sincerity in all this, only obligation. His visits were always short and to the point. Sometimes I thought his to-do list read, "Call my mom for 5 minutes." Lavinia was more forthright in her attitude toward me. In the early years of their marriage, she tried to please, often dropping by with little Audrey, helping around the house. But gradually her enthusiasm waned, especially when she realized that Ray and I had left Thorne no significant inheritance. Sure, there was a house and a small savings, but it was incomparable to what Lavinia had hoped for when she married the only son of a successful engineer. What she didn't know, and what even Thorne didn't know, was that Ray had indeed left an inheritance. A substantial inheritance. But not in the form of property or bank accounts, but in the form of a patent on one of his designs, which he had completed shortly before his death. The technology was in demand, and a major technology company paid $7 million for exclusive rights to it. The money arrived in my account just a year after Ray's death. I never told anyone about the money. Not even Thorne, especially Thorne. At the time, he was just starting his practice, was married for a second year, and Audrey was just a baby. I decided that I would save that money for him and his family, invest it wisely, and when the time came, I would surprise him with that inheritance. At first, I thought about telling him right away, but something stopped me. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe I just wanted to give him a chance to make it on his own. Ray had always said that a fortune earned with one's own hands was more valuable than an inheritance. So I decided to wait. As the years went by, Thorne was indeed a self-made man. His dental practice flourished, Lavinia developed her business, they bought a large house, sent their children to private schools, traveled to expensive resorts they didn't need. And the more successful they became, the less they thought of me. Of course, on the surface, everything looked decent. They stopped by for Thanksgiving, Christmas, my birthday. Sometimes they'd invite me to their parties, where I'd sit in the corner and listen to conversations about people I didn't know. Thorne would introduce me to his friends with pride. And this is my mother, Emma. She still lives alone and is doing great. It sounded like a compliment, but I could hear the implication. Look, she's not hanging around my neck. I reached for my phone and dialed the number of a plumber. The young man who answered promised to be there in an hour. That's good, I thought. No need to wait for Thorne. Sometimes I thought he was purposely delaying minor repairs so that I would finally give up and move into a nursing home. Not that he'd ever suggested I live with them. Lavinia had been adamantly opposed to the idea, and I couldn't blame her. I didn't want to be a burden myself. But it was painful to realize that the only child I'd carried, born, and raised saw me as an annoying liability. Sometimes I wondered what Ray would say if he saw what our relationship with my son had become. He was always closer to Thorne than I was. Male solidarity, fishing trips together, talking about machinery and technology. Maybe if Ray were alive, things would be different. The plumber arrived right on time. A young guy named Brent turned out to be talkative and friendly. He fixed the faucet in 20 minutes, drank the tea offered, and even shared stories about his grandmother, who had recently celebrated her 80th birthday. She still drives a car and bowls every Sunday, he said with a smile. She says the secret to longevity is to never stop moving. I smiled back. It was nice to talk to someone who didn't look at his watch every 5 minutes. After the plumber left, I decided to go for a walk despite the drizzling rain. A raincoat, a scarf, an umbrella, and I was already outside, breathing in the fresh air. I loved seeing the changes in our neighborhood. New neighbors, new fences, kids who grew a couple of inches over the summer. I walked slowly, leaning on my cane, not because I couldn't walk without it, but for backup on the slippery sidewalks. Thorne had given me this cane for my 75th birthday, a beautiful one with a silver handle. It's antique, Mom, he said then. I didn't bother to remind him that an antique cane is not the most tactful gift for an elderly mother. I thanked him and used the cane in front of him so as not to offend. On the way home, I stopped at a small supermarket. I liked shopping on my own, although Thorne insisted on having groceries delivered. You don't have to carry heavy bags, Mom, he said. But I knew he just didn't want me to have an accident or fall on the way home from the store. Another problem for a busy son. At the store, I unexpectedly ran into Wendy, my former colleague at the library where I had worked before I retired. We hadn't seen each other in months, and I was delighted to meet her. Emma, it's been so long since I've seen you, she exclaimed, hugging me. How are you? I'm fine, Wendy, I replied, slowly. Did you hear Thorne opened another office? He's got 4 dentists now? Yeah, he's doing great. And I hear Lavinia's business is growing too? 3 beauty parlors, I confirmed. She works hard. You should be proud of them, Wendy said with a smile. Successful children like that are the best reward for parents. I nodded, not knowing what to say. Yes, I was proud of my son's accomplishments. But did it make me happy? Did it make me happy to realize that my only child was living a wonderful life, but not finding time to call just for no reason? How about you? I asked, changing the subject. Are you still working at the library? No, I quit last year. I volunteer at a children's hospice now. I read books to kids who... She didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. That's wonderful, Wendy. You always had a knack for finding the right books for everyone. We talked some more. Wendy invited me to a meeting of former library staff next month. and I promised to think about it. Back home, I put away the groceries and sat by the window with a cup of tea. The rain had intensified, and I was glad I'd made it back before the real downpour. My thoughts returned to my conversation with Wendy. Maybe I should have done some volunteering too, or find some hobby other than reading and watching old movies. I had the time, my health allowed, and importantly, I had the funds. The same 7 million that lay in accounts and investment portfolios managed by my financial advisor, Alistair Prime. Alistair was the only person besides me who knew about Ray's money. He worked for a small but reputable investment firm and had been handling my finances for almost 20 years. Thanks to his advice, the sum had not only not decreased, but had grown considerably, despite periodic economic crises. At the beginning of each month, Alistair sent me a report on the status of my accounts and investments. I read these reports carefully, although I did not always understand all the terms. Ray taught me the basics of financial literacy, and I tried to keep track of my money, even if Alistair did most of the work. I never spent that money on myself. Lived on my pension and what little savings Ray and I had before his invention. My house was modest but comfortable, my car practical but not new. I didn't allow myself luxuries, believing that this money was the future of Thorne and his children. But what if I was wrong? What if, by protecting Thorne from unearned wealth, I had deprived him of the opportunity to learn that his father was not just a middle-class engineer, but a true inventor whose work was valued in the millions? What if, by hiding the money from him, I had unwittingly contributed to his estrangement from me? Or more likely, if Thorne had found out about the money sooner, wouldn't he have become even more indifferent, believing that I was already well off and didn't need his attention? The phone vibrated again. This time it was Lavinia. Emma? It's Lavinia. Thorne said you agreed to look after the house next week? Yeah, of course. Great. I made a list of things to do. Water the plants, check the mail, turn the lights on and off at night. I'll send it to you in a text. Okay, Lavinia. Also, we're keeping Mickey. She's our new cat. We got her from the shelter last month. I was surprised. Lavinia knew I was allergic to cats. But Lavinia, I'm allergic to— You're not going to live in our house, Emma, she interrupted me. Just come by twice a day to feed her and clean her litter box. It'll take 5 minutes. I'm sure you'll be fine. I didn't argue. Sure, I could have said that even 5 minutes in the presence of a cat was enough to give me an allergy attack, but I knew Lavinia would brush off my objections, or worse, accuse me of being dramatic. All right, Lavinia, I'll deal with the cat. Thank you, Emma. You're a real help. She disconnected without even asking how I was doing. I put the phone away and looked out the window at the rain. All these years I'd been saving Ray's money for Thorne and his family. But did they deserve it? Did they deserve $7 million people who couldn't take 5 minutes to genuinely inquire about my life? For the first time in 20 years, I allowed myself to wonder, what if I spent that money on myself? Buy a house somewhere on the islands, hire servants, travel, maybe even buy a yacht? What if instead of waiting to die in a quiet house in Kannapolis, I started living for real? The thought was so unfamiliar, so liberating that I was almost afraid of it. But it had already settled in my mind, and I knew I would return to it again and again. December came to Kannapolis with a cold wind and the first snow. I've never been a fan of winter, but in recent years, its arrival has brought a special melancholy. Ray loved Christmas, hanging garlands all over the house, setting up glowing reindeer on the lawn, baking ginger cookies. After he died, I continued to honor some of the traditions, but each year I did less and less. I pulled a small artificial Christmas tree out of the pantry, the same one Ray and I had bought at our last Christmas sale together. It was modest, no more than a meter tall, but it was enough for me. Setting it on the dresser in the living room, I added a few glass balls and a silver garland. That was all the decorations. Sitting down in my chair, I looked at Ray's picture on the wall. He was smiling, standing at his desk in the garage he'd turned into a workshop. It was there that his latest invention was born, an improved chip for medical devices that later earned me $7 million. Ray worked on this project for the last 2 years of his life. He would spend hours in the workshop, sometimes forgetting to eat. I brought him sandwiches and coffee, which he devoured without taking his eyes off the schematics and formulas. He would explain his work to me, and though I didn't understand the technical details, I could see his eyes light up when he talked about the potential applications of his invention. Imagine, Emma, he said, this chip will be able to process data 10 times faster than its existing counterparts. That means medical equipment will be able to detect problems at much earlier stages. Just think how many lives that could save. I believed him. I always believed in his genius, even when others doubted. Ray wasn't just an engineer, he was a visionary. He just lacked the ambition and business acumen to turn his ideas into commercial success, until that last invention. He managed to patent his design a month before doctors discovered he had an aggressive form of pancreatic cancer. Ironically, the man who created the technology for early detection of disease himself went to the doctors too late. By the time it was discovered, the cancer was already at stage 4. Ray died 3 months after the diagnosis. He didn't have time to see his invention change the world of medical diagnostics. No time to be recognized by the professional community. No time to enjoy the financial rewards of years of labor. Thorne was 34 years old at the time. He had just opened his dental practice, taking out a mortgage and equipment loan. He and Lavinia had been married for 2 years, and little Audrey was only a year old. They lived modestly in a small house on the outskirts of Kannapolis, and Lavinia only dreamed of owning her own business. After Ray's death, it took several months before representatives from a large technology company contacted me. They were interested in Ray's patent and offered to buy it back for a substantial sum. I didn't know what to do, so I sought the advice of Alistair Prime, a financial advisor who had been recommended to me by a colleague of Ray's. Alistair helped me negotiate and eventually get the best deal possible, $7 million plus a small percentage of future sales of Ray's chip equipment. The money was deposited into my account in a single payment, and I was suddenly richer than I had ever imagined. At that moment, it seemed natural to share the news with Thorne, to tell him about his father's genius, that Ray wasn't just fixing equipment at the company where he worked, but creating new technology. To show him that hard work could yield impressive results, even if not right away. But something stopped me. Perhaps it was a conversation with Alistair, who warned me against making hasty decisions. $7 million is a considerable sum, Mrs. Holloway, he said then. But it can disappear very quickly if not managed wisely. Let's have a financial plan first. Or maybe it was a conversation I overheard with Thorne when he was visiting me shortly after my father's death. He was on the phone with Lavinia. Yeah, I'm fine, no. Mom's doing great. Don't worry, I won't be long. Yes, I'll ask about the house. Mom can't keep it alone, that's obvious. Maybe we can convince her to sell it and move to a smaller apartment. No, I'm not asking her to live with us. We don't have enough space. Where else would we put my mother? That conversation hurt me deeply. Thorne thought I was a burden before I could even be a burden. I was only 57 years old, in great shape, working at the library and didn't need any help. But he was already planning how to get rid of a potential problem. At that moment, I decided I wouldn't tell him about the money. At least not right away. I wanted to see how he would cope on his own, without a financial cushion from his parents. I wanted him to learn to appreciate what he earned through his own labor, like Ray had taught him. And he did. In 20 years, Thorne went from an aspiring dentist to the owner of a respectable clinic. Lavinia opened her first beauty parlor, then a second, then a third. They moved into a spacious house in an upscale neighborhood, sent their children to private schools, went to expensive resorts. I watched their successes from the sidelines, proud of their accomplishments, and at the same time becoming a more and more insignificant part of their lives. The better their business went, the less they needed me. Calls became less frequent, visits shorter, conversations more superficial. There were times when I almost dared to tell Thorne about the money, like when Audrey was applying to college and they were worried about tuition, or when Lavinia had trouble renting space for her third salon and had to take out a loan. But each time, I stopped, partly out of fear that they would see my silence all these years as a betrayal. Partly because by then they were used to solving their problems on their own and probably wouldn't even accept my help. But mostly because I didn't want to be valued for money alone. All these years later, I had planned to leave them money as an inheritance. I'd made a will that divided the bulk of it between Thorne, Audrey, and Edwin, with a small portion going to charity the Young Inventors Fund I'd set up in Ray's memory. But lately, I'd been wondering more and more if they deserved the inheritance, especially after the Thanksgiving incident when Lavinia forgot to invite me to the family dinner. I found out about it by accident from a neighbor who saw them all together at a restaurant. When I asked Thorne why I hadn't been invited, he mumbled something about thinking I didn't like restaurants, and they didn't want to bother me. I couldn't sleep for a long time that night, pondering the fact that my only son didn't see fit to include me in family celebrations. That his wife, who has called me mom for 23 years, sees nothing strange about forgetting about her mother-in-law. That my grandchildren, whom I once babysat, now barely say hello when I see them, staring at their phones. And then the thought crossed my mind. What if I spent that money on myself? What if, instead of leaving an inheritance to people who were already well off and didn't seem to appreciate me much, I let myself enjoy my last years? The next day, I called Alistair and asked him to come over for a consultation. He was surprised. We usually met once a quarter at his office, and the next meeting was still 2 weeks away. "Is something wrong, Mrs. Holloway?" he asked worriedly. "No, Alistair, nothing urgent. It's just that I need your advice on some change of plans." He arrived 2 days later, elegant as ever, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a strict suit. Alistair was in his mid-50s, and in the 20 years we'd been working together, he hadn't changed much, except for a few gray hairs on his temples. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Holloway," he said as we entered the house. "You always do." "Come on, Alistair," I smiled as I led him into the living room. "At my age, that's not a compliment, it's a polite lie." "No, it's not. You're perfectly preserved for 77. Many of my clients half your age look much worse." We sat down at the dining table, which I had set with a tea set and homemade cookies. Alistair took a file folder out of his briefcase. "So, Mrs. Holloway, were there any changes you wanted to discuss? Problems with the current investment portfolio?" "No, Alistair, there's nothing wrong with the portfolio. You're managing my finances very well, as always. I wanted to talk about—" I paused, trying to find the right words. "About some changes in my plans for the future." He raised an eyebrow but said nothing, waiting for me to continue. "You see, all these years I've been saving money for Thorne and his family. Plan to leave them a nice inheritance. But lately I've been thinking maybe I should spend some of it on myself, while I can still enjoy life." Alistair looked at me carefully. "That's a perfectly reasonable thought, Mrs. Holloway. If I may make a personal remark, I have long wondered why you live so frugal with such means. Of course, prudence in finances is commendable, but sometimes one can afford certain pleasures. I was thinking of a house, somewhere warm, maybe the Caribbean or Florida. That's a wonderful idea. With your money, you can afford a nice property in any of those places. Have you looked at anything in particular yet?" "Not really. I was also thinking about a yacht, and traveling, and perhaps hiring staff. I'm not getting any younger, and some help around the house would be useful." Alistair nodded, making notes in his notebook. "It's all quite feasible with your capital, Mrs. Holloway. A nice house in an upscale neighborhood in Florida or the Caribbean will cost from $500,000 to $2 million, depending on the size and location. A yacht is from $500,000 to several million, again, depending on size and equipment. Staff, that's about $150,000 a year. Travel, let's budget another $100,000 a year. It's all well within your means." I listened to him, and my fantasies began to take shape. It really was possible. I could really afford such a life. "What about an inheritance for Thorne and the grandchildren, huh?" I asked. "I still want to leave them something. Even if you spend 2 or 3 million on a house, a yacht, and other large purchases, you still have a substantial amount left for an inheritance. Plus, don't forget about investment income. Your portfolio generates about $400,000 a year, which is more than enough to cover your current expenses and reinvest." We agreed that I would start with a trip to the Caribbean after Christmas. Alistair recommended me a good travel agent and promised to prepare several investment portfolio options focused on my new goals. The next day, I called the travel agent and made an appointment. The thought of my upcoming trip filled me with energy. For the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to the future instead of looking back nostalgically at the past. In mid-December, Thorne called to discuss Christmas plans. Mom, we're thinking of getting together at our house on the 25th, 5 o'clock at night. Is that okay with you? Yeah, sure, Thorn. What can I bring? You don't need anything, Mom. Lavinia will make the arrangements. Just come over. I could bake your favorite pecan pie. Don't bother, Mom. Lavinia's already ordered dessert from the pastry shop. I swallowed my resentment. My pecan pie was always the centerpiece of family gatherings. Ray said it was worth living to see Christmas. Thorn loved that pecan pie when he was a kid, but apparently now he preferred store-bought desserts to my homemade baked goods. A few days later, Lavinia called with a request to babysit their new cat, Mickey, during their trip to a New Year's Eve corporate event. Despite my cat allergy, which she was well aware of, Lavinia insisted. You won't be living in our house, Emma, she said. Just stop by twice a day to feed her and clean her litter box. It'll take 5 minutes. I'm sure you can do it. I didn't argue, even though I knew that even 5 minutes in the presence of a cat was enough to give me an allergy attack. Lavinia passed out without even asking how I was doing. A week before Christmas, I decided to take another step toward my new life. I called a realtor specializing in Florida and Caribbean real estate and asked him to send me houses for sale. The very next day, I received an email with dozens of photos of luxury oceanfront villas. One of them, located on St. Bart's, particularly caught my eye. A white house with blue shutters surrounded by palm trees with its own access to the beach. I called the realtor and told her I would like to view this house during my trip in January. She was thrilled and promised to make arrangements. That same evening, Thorn called. He sounded annoyed. Mom, could you come over tomorrow? Our dishwasher is broken and Lavinia is hosting a pre-Christmas dinner for her staff. We need you to help with the dishes. Sure, Thorn. What time should I get there? 6 o'clock would be perfect. And Mom, wear something, decent. There'll be some important people there for Lavinia. I could feel the irritation building inside me. Thorn hadn't called me in 2 weeks, and now he was calling me just because they needed a free au pair, and he has the nerve to tell me how to dress. I'll try not to embarrass you by looking like that, Thorn, I said colder than I intended. Mom, that's not what I meant. I'll be there at 6, in decent clothes. I hung up the phone, feeling my hands shaking. For the first time in years, I let myself show irritation when talking to my son. Usually I held back for fear of offending him or seeming ungrateful for the crumbs of attention I received. But now, with plans for a new life already forming in my head, I felt freer. The next day, I actually arrived at their house at 6 in the evening, dressed in my best dress and jacket. Lavinia met me on the doorstep, already in evening attire with perfect hair and makeup. Emma, thank God you're here. The guests will be here any minute. Dishes are in the kitchen, aprons in the kitchen. When it's done, just put the plates in the cupboard. Thorn will fix the dishwasher this weekend. She turned and walked off into the living room without even thanking me. I walked into the kitchen and found a mountain of unwashed dishes. Obviously, they'd been piling them up for days waiting for the dishwasher to be repaired. I put on an apron and got to work. I spent the entire evening in the kitchen, washing dishes and occasionally helping to serve dishes. None of the guests paid any attention to me. To them, I was just an attendant. Lavinia didn't introduce me to any of her coworkers or employees. Thorn, walking past the kitchen, tossed, "Everything okay, Mom?" And without waiting for an answer, went back to the guests. By the time the last guest left, it was almost midnight. I washed the last plate, took off my apron, and went out into the living room. Lavinia was sitting on the couch sipping wine. Thorn was putting away empty glasses. "So, how did it go?" I asked. "Great," Lavinia answered without looking at me. "Thanks for your help, Emma." "Yeah, thanks, Mom," Thorn echoed. "You really helped us out." "I ordered a cab," I said. "It should be here any minute." "A cab?" Thorn finally looked at me. "I could drive you." "No need, I can see you're tired. And I don't want to wait for you to finish up here." I said goodbye and went outside to wait for a cab. I didn't want to stay another minute in their house, where I didn't feel like a mother and grandmother, but like a servant, called in when needed and released when not needed. In the cab, I reflected on how our relationship with Thorn had changed over the years. When he was a child, we were so close. I read him stories, taught him how to ride his bike, helped him with his homework. He trusted me with his secrets, shared his dreams. When he started dating Lavinia, I was happy for him. She seemed like a smart and ambitious girl who could make him happy. And maybe she was. Maybe they really were happy together. There just wasn't room for me in their happiness. When I got home, I sat down at my computer and opened the email from the realtor. I looked at the pictures of the house on St. Bart's one more time and texted her that I wanted to set up an appointment as soon as possible. I'll be coming to the island on January 3rd, I wrote, and would like to tour the house the same day. For the first time in years, I felt like I was actually looking forward to something. Christmas at Thorne and Lavinia's house was no longer a holiday I looked forward to. Now it was just an obligatory event to be experienced. But going to the Caribbean, seeing the dream house, planning a new life, it was all filling me with an energy and excitement I hadn't felt in a long time. Ray would be pleased, I thought as I looked at his picture. He always wanted me to live life to the fullest. Christmas morning was unexpectedly sunny for December in Kannapolis. Rays of light were streaming through the blinds into my bedroom when I opened my eyes. For a moment, I thought I heard Ray's voice calling me into the kitchen, where he'd already prepared a holiday breakfast. But it was just a trick of the ear. Ray had passed away 20 years ago, and since then, Christmas mornings had become the loneliest hours of the year for me. I slowly got out of bed and walked to the window. The neighbors' houses were decorated with garlands and Christmas figures. Children were already running around outside, showing off their new gifts to each other. Life went on, with or without Ray. After eating breakfast and drinking a cup of coffee, I got busy preparing for my evening visit with Thorne and Lavinia. Although Lavinia insisted I didn't need to bring anything, I couldn't come empty-handed. I pulled out the gifts I had prepared. For Thorne, antique cufflinks that had once belonged to his grandfather. For Lavinia, a silk scarf bought at an expensive boutique in Charlotte. For Audrey, a silver bracelet engraved with her initials. For Edwin, a collector's edition of a science fiction novel I hoped would interest him. Then I took care of myself. I chose a long-sleeved dark blue dress, dressy enough for the holiday, but not too flashy. I styled my hair and applied light makeup. The mirror reflected a woman who looked much younger than her 77 years. Good genes and self-care had done their job. I had almost no deep wrinkles, my back was straight, and my gait was confident. As I was finishing my preparations, the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, with an international code. "Hello?" I answered with some apprehension. "Mrs. Holloway?" It was a woman's voice with a slight accent. "This is Isabel Dupre, the realtor from St. Bart's. I'm sorry to disturb you on a holiday, but I have great news. The owners of the villa you were interested in are willing to reduce the price by $200,000 if you make a decision within a week of the inspection." I was surprised to get a call on Christmas Day, but it was good news indeed. "Thank you, Ms. Dupre. This is a very interesting offer. I'll be on the island on January 3rd as we agreed." "That's fine, Mrs. Holloway. I'll have all the documents ready for inspection. If you decide to purchase the villa, we can sign the preliminary contract the very next day. The owners are very motivated to sell, and with your budget of $2.5 million, we could even discuss including some furniture and equipment in the deal." "That sounds wonderful," I replied, feeling the excitement growing inside at the thought of my own villa by the sea. "I'll look forward to seeing you again." "Me too, Mrs. Holloway. Merry Christmas to you." "Merry Christmas, Miss Dupre." I hung up without noticing Thorne standing in the kitchen doorway. He'd come to pick me up for a family dinner and had obviously walked in while I was on the phone. His face was a mixture of surprise and confusion. "Mom," he said slowly. "What was that? Who were you talking to about $2.5 million?" I felt the blood rush from my face. 20 years of secrecy was about to come out, and I wasn't ready for it. "Thorne, I didn't hear you come in." "The door was unlocked," he answered, still staring at me. "So what was it? Some kind of prank? Phone scammers?" I took a deep breath. The moment of truth had arrived, though not the way I'd planned it. "No, Thorne, it wasn't a joke and it wasn't scammers. It was a realtor from the Caribbean, considering buying a villa on St. Bart's." His eyebrows rose so high they almost disappeared beneath his hairline. "A villa? On St. Bart's? For $2.5 million? Mom, are you okay? Maybe you should see a doctor." "There's nothing wrong with me, Thorne. I replied, feeling my irritation mingle with my shame. I'm not out of my mind, if that's what you mean. Then please explain to me how you're going to buy a villa for 2.5 million when you've lived on a librarian's pension all your life? I sighed and pointed to a chair. I think we'd better sit down. It's a long story, and I'm sorry you're learning about it this way. Thorne sat down, keeping a wary eye on me. I gathered my thoughts and began the story of Ray's latest invention, the patent, the deal with the technology company, and the $7 million that had been sitting in my accounts and investment portfolios all these years. As I spoke, the expression on Thorne's face changed from disbelief to amazement, then to shock, and finally to something I couldn't quite pinpoint, perhaps a mixture of resentment and anger. Are you telling me, he said when I was done, that all these years you've had $7 million and you never told me anything? Not even when I took out a mortgage and a loan for equipment for the clinic? Even when Lavinia and I were working 16 hours a day to provide for our family? Even when Audrey needed to pay for college? Thorne, I wanted you to make it on your own. On your own like your father taught you. And you did it. Look at you. A successful dentist with your own practice, a beautiful home, a happy family. You've achieved all that without my financial help, and I'm proud of you. We have to go, he said finally, glancing at his watch. Lavinia is waiting. We'll continue this conversation later with the family. The drive to Thorne's house passed in tense silence. When we arrived, Lavinia met us at the door, dressed in an elegant red dress with perfect hair and makeup. Merry Christmas, Emma. She hugged me, formal as always, barely touching me. Come in, everyone's already here. Everyone meant Audrey, who was home from college for the vacations, and Edwin, who was engrossed in his phone as usual. They both said hello to me languidly, accepting gifts with polite but insincere smiles. I noticed Thorne take Lavinia aside and say something quietly to her. Her eyes widened, and she cast me a look of incredulity and strange, greedy interest. They whispered for a few more minutes, and then Lavinia came up to me with a whole new expression on her face, a wide smile and shining eyes. Emma, darling, let me take your coat, she murmured. You look gorgeous today. Is that a new dress? That shade of blue suits you so well. I let her take the coat, realizing that Lavinia's new attitude was a direct consequence of my unexpected wealth. She had never before been interested in my clothes or complimented my looks. Thank you, Lavinia. You look beautiful, too. Let's go to the living room. She took me under her arm, something she had never done before. I made your favorite punch. Or perhaps you'd prefer champagne? We have some excellent champagne French. Punch would be perfect, thank you. In the parlor, Lavinia sat me in the most comfortable chair and almost forcibly handed me a glass of punch. Thorne sat across from me, still immersed in his own thoughts. Audrey and Edwin didn't seem to notice the change in atmosphere and continued to work on their phones. Children, Lavinia said loudly, put your phones away and talk to your grandmother. She came all this way to be with us today. I almost choked on my punch. Such a journey was only a 15-minute drive, and Lavinia had never insisted that the kids socialize with me before. Dinner passed in the same strange atmosphere. Lavinia kept putting me down the best bites, interested in my opinion on every subject, laughing at my every joke. Thorne was more reserved, but I noticed him watching me as if trying to solve a riddle. The children, having received invisible signals from their parents, were unusually polite and attentive. After dessert, when we were all settled in the living room with coffee, Thorne cleared his throat and looked at the children. Your grandmother has some amazing news, he said. It turns out that Grandpa Ray wasn't just an engineer, but a real inventor. Before he died, he patented a technology that was sold for… How much, Mom? $7 million, I answered quietly. Audrey and Edwin's eyes widened almost comically. 7 million? Audrey exclaimed. Grandma, are you serious? Absolutely, I nodded. Your grandfather was a genius. He created a technology that greatly improved medical diagnosis. The company that bought the patent paid $7 million plus a percentage of equipment sales. And all that money, you have it? Edwin asked, showing genuine interest in the conversation for the first time all evening. Yes, Edwin. I've been saving it all these years, investing it through a financial advisor. Now it's even more than the original $7 million. But why didn't you ever tell us? Audrey asked with a tinge of resentment in her voice. I wanted your father to achieve everything on his own, without a financial cushion from his parents. And he did. I'm proud of what he's accomplished on his own. But now that we know about the money, Lavinia intervened, we can think about how best to use it. For the whole family. I looked at her. This is it. I've been waiting for this moment ever since Thorne discovered my secret. Actually, Lavinia, I already have plans for that money. What plans? She asked, still smiling, but with tension in her voice. I'm going to buy a house on St. Bart's, maybe a yacht, travel, hire staff to live comfortably. The smile slowly slid off Lavinia's face. But, that's a lot of money, Emma. You can't spend all that money on your own. What about your family? What about Thorne, your only son? What about your grandchildren? Thorne is perfectly well off, I said calmly. He has a successful practice, a house, cars. Audrey is in a prestigious college. Edwin will soon follow. You don't need my money. This isn't about need, Emma. Lavinia was beginning to lose patience. It's about justice. That money is Ray's inheritance. It should stay in the family, pass on to the next generation. It is in the family, Lavinia. I have it, and I'm family too, aren't I? Lavinia straightened in her chair, her face hard. Emma, be reasonable. You're 77 years old. How much longer will you live? 5 years? 10? Why do you need a house in the islands and a yacht? That money should belong to the whole family. Give it back. There was silence in the room. Even Thorne seemed shocked by his wife's bluntness. Lavinia! He shouted at her. What? She turned to him. I'm telling the truth. Your mother has been hiding millions from us all these years, and now she wants to spend it on some fantasy instead of taking care of the family's future. It's selfish and unfair. I looked at her, feeling strangely calm. The masks are finally dropped. No more fake smiles, no more fake compliments, just pure, unadulterated greed. I'm not going to give you that money, Lavinia, I said quietly but firmly. Not now, not after I'm dead. What do you mean? Her voice became shrill. I'm changing my will. Instead of leaving everything to you, I'm spending the money on myself. A house on the islands, a yacht, traveling, personal servants, everything Ray and I dreamed of but could never afford. And the rest of the money will go to charity, the Young Inventors Fund I've set up in Ray's memory. Lavinia went pale as if I'd physically hit her. You can't do that, she whispered. It's Ray's money and it has to stay in the family. It will stay in the family, Lavinia. My family, which, as it turns out, you're not part of. Real family isn't people who only remember you when they need something. Not the ones who forget to invite you to Thanksgiving. Not the ones who ask you to cat sit knowing you're allergic. And certainly not the ones who only take an interest in your life after hearing about your millions. Thorne looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Perhaps it was realization, perhaps shame. Mom, he started, but I held up my hand, stopping him. There's no need, Thorne. I'm not blaming you or your family. You live your own lives, you have your own priorities, I understand that. But you have to understand that I have a right to live my life and use my money as I see fit. But we're a family, he said, almost pleadingly. Family is more than just blood ties, Thorne. A family is people who care about each other, who take an interest in each other's lives, who help each other not because they hope to get something in return, but because they love each other. We were a family once, but that was a long time ago. The day after Christmas greeted me with silence. I woke up late, feeling a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. The events of last night were still running through my mind. The shocked look on Thorne's face, Lavinia's pale fury, the puzzled looks on my grandchildren's faces. My secret that I'd kept for 20 years had been revealed in the most unexpected way, and now I had to live with the consequences. I brewed coffee and sat by the window, watching a neighbor boy ride his new bike down the snowy street. The simple joy of childhood. Thorne had been like that once, too. An enthusiastic child excited about a new toy. When did it change? When did he turn into a man for whom money became more important than relationships? Or had he always been like that and I just didn't want to see it? The phone rang, interrupting my musings. It was Alistair. Good morning, Mrs. Holloway. I hope I didn't wake you. No, Alistair, I've been up a long time. Is something the matter? I just wanted to let you know that I've prepared the papers to change your will as we discussed. You'll be able to sign them after the holidays. I've spoken to the travel agent who's arranged your visit to St. Bart's. I've sent all the details to your email. Thank you, Alistair. You're very prompt. Always happy to help. By the way, he paused. Ms. Dupre, the realtor from St. Bart's, said she contacted you yesterday. I hope the news was good? Yes, very. The owners are willing to lower the price if I make a quick decision. That's great. I'll prepare the necessary transfer of funds if you decide to purchase the villa. I'll just need your final approval. We talked for a few more minutes about the details of the trip, and I could feel my excitement growing. This was really happening. I was really going to change my life, move to an island, live in a luxury villa by the sea. At the age of 77, I had finally decided to embark on an adventure. Before I could hang up the phone, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I was surprised to find Thorne with a large bouquet of flowers. Good morning, Mom, he said, smiling strangely. I thought I'd stop by and check on you. At 9 in the morning, the day after Christmas? I raised an eyebrow but stepped back, letting him into the house. Come on in. He came in, handing me a bouquet of gorgeous white lilies and roses, obviously expensive. These are for you. I know you like lilies. I did love lilies, but Thorne had never given me flowers before, not for a special occasion. Thank you, I said, accepting the bouquet. They're very pretty. I'm going to put them in water. In the kitchen, I took out a vase, filled it with water, and carefully arranged the flowers. Thorne stood in the doorway, watching me with an unreadable expression. Coffee? I offered. Yes, please. I poured him a cup and sat down across from him. We were silent for a few long seconds before he spoke. Mom, I wanted to apologize for yesterday. Lavinia, she didn't mean it that way. She didn't mean for it to sound so rude. How did she mean it to sound, Thorne? I asked calmly. Give us your money. You're going to die soon anyway. Is there any other way to put it? He wrinkled his nose but continued. She was as shocked as the rest of us. Understand, this is huge news. $7 million, and you never told us. 20 years, Mom. 20 years you kept from us that Dad was a genius inventor, that his work was worth millions. Don't you think we had a right to know? Maybe, I admitted. But at the time, I made what I thought was the right decision. I wanted you to build a life for yourself without the easy money. And look what you've accomplished. You're successful, you have a beautiful family, your own business. Was that the wrong decision? It's not about that, Mom. It's about trust. You didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. There was some truth in what he said, and it hurt me. But I also saw another motive behind that hurt, the same motive Lavinia had. What do you want, Thorne? I asked bluntly. Why did you come here today? He sighed, averting his gaze. I want you to reconsider your decision, Mother. That money, it could stay in the family. You don't have to give it to us now, but in the future, for the grandchildren, for their education, for their start in life. Audrey and Edwin already have a great start in life thanks to you and Lavinia. They have opportunities that most people can only dream of. And they don't even know me, Thorne. They barely speak to me at family gatherings. That can be changed, Mom. We can all talk more, spend more time together. Only now that you found out about the money? I shook my head. That's not the kind of relationship I want, Thorne. It's not sincere. Thorne looked discouraged. He clearly didn't expect me to be so adamant. Mom, please think about it. Don't make any rash decisions. That money, it's part of Dad's legacy. It should stay in the family. I am family, Thorne. And Ray would be the first person to tell me to spend that money on myself, to live the life we dreamed of together, but didn't get to. Thorne finished his coffee and set the cup on the table. I have to go. I have a patient at 10. But we'll come back to this conversation, Mom. Please, just think about what I said. He walked away, leaving me with a gorgeous bouquet and a bitter aftertaste from the conversation. I realized that this was only the beginning. Thorne and Lavinia wouldn't give up so easily, especially with that kind of money involved. And I was right. In the days that followed, my house suddenly became the center of the family's attention. Lavinia stopped by with homemade baked goods, bought at the bakery, but carefully arranged on her own plates. Thorne called several times a day, inquiring about my health and mood. Even the grandchildren showed unexpected attention. Audrey sent me selfies from college with the caption, "Miss you, Grandma." and Edwin offered to help me set up my computer, even though he didn't even know I had a computer before. All of these expressions of sudden love and concern were so transparent that they were almost pitiful. But I wasn't about to give in to these manipulations. I politely accepted their visits and calls, thanked them for their attention, but remained firm in my decision. On Friday, 3 days after Christmas, I met with the travel agent Alistair had recommended. Sheila Morrison turned out to be an energetic middle-aged woman specializing in luxury travel. "Mrs. Holloway, I've prepared some options for you," she said, laying out glossy brochures on the cafe table. "Given your wishes, I recommend starting in St. Bart's, then Antigua, and perhaps Santa Lucia. On each island, we have luxury rooms booked in the best hotels. Private transfers, personal guide if you wish. It's all top-notch." I looked through the booklets, marveling at the pictures of azure water, white sand beaches, luxurious villas. It was a world I had never seen before, a world that had always seemed out of reach. "It looks magnificent, Sheila. When can we arrange everything?" "I've booked you on January 3rd as you requested. A direct flight to St. Martin, then a private jet to St. Bart's. A hotel representative will meet you and take you directly to your suite. There you will meet Ms. Dupre for a tour of the villa." "Excellent. What about the yachts? You said you could arrange a tour?" "Yes, of course. We're scheduled to meet a broker in Antigua who specializes in luxury yachts. He has a few that might interest you, ranging from $800,000 to $2 million. All yachts are no older than 5 years, fully equipped and ready to go." I nodded, feeling the excitement growing inside. Ray had always dreamed of a yacht, of sailing along the Caribbean coast. Now I could fulfill that dream for both of us. "That's wonderful, Sheila. I trust your choice." We discussed a few more details of the trip, and I signed all the necessary paperwork. As I left the cafe, I felt light and free, as if I'd shed the weight I'd been carrying all these years. When I returned home, I found a basket of fruit on my doorstep and a note from Lavinia. "Dear Emma, I hope this fruit will cheer you up. Thorne and I would like to invite you to dinner on Saturday. Love, Lavinia." I set the basket on the kitchen table and shook my head. Lavinia had never left me a gift before and certainly never signed "with love." It was so obvious that it wasn't even annoying, just tired of their transparent attempts at manipulation. I decided to accept their invitation. After all, I was leaving soon anyway, and I needed to let them know my plans. Better to do it in person than leave a note or call from the airport. Saturday night, I put on the same dark blue dress I'd worn for Christmas, took a cab, and drove to Thorne and Lavinia's house. They met me at the door with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Mommy, it's so good of you to come." Thorne hugged me as tightly as he hadn't hugged me in years. "Come on in, we're so happy to see you." Lavinia hugged me too, enveloping me in a cloud of expensive perfume. "Emma, darling, you look gorgeous. Is that the same dress you wore at Christmas? It suits you so well." "Yes, it's the same," I said, walking into the living room. "I don't see the point of buying a new one for every dinner." "Oh, but you could," Lavinia exclaimed enthusiastically. "With your possibilities, you could buy a new dress every day." "I've never been a spender, Lavinia," I said calmly, "and I'm not going to start now." The table was already set in the living room, not in the dining room as usual, but right here by the fireplace, creating a more intimate, homey atmosphere. There were candles on the table, expensive wine, crystal glasses. Everything looked like the setting for a romantic dinner, not a family reunion. "Would the kids be joining us tonight?" I asked, noticing that the table was only set for 3. "Audrey's gone back to college and Edwin's at a friend's house," Thorne answered. "We thought it would be a good opportunity for the 3 of us to talk quietly. Like adults." "Like a family," Lavinia added with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The dinner was exquisite, clearly ordered from an expensive restaurant, not prepared by Lavinia, who had never been noted for her culinary talents. The conversation at first revolved around neutral topics, the weather, the local news, the latest movies. But I knew it was just foreplay. When we got to dessert, chocolate souffle, my favorite, which Lavinia suddenly remembered, Thorne finally got down to business. "Mom, Lavinia and I have been thinking a lot about what you told us at Christmas. About Daddy's invention, about the money, your plans. Minus I?" I put the spoon down, preparing for what was to follow. "And we realized you were absolutely right," Lavinia said with a smile that looked almost genuine. "You deserve to live for yourself. to enjoy the fruits of Ray's labor. We fully support your decision to buy a house on the islands, to travel, even to buy a yacht. I looked at her in disbelief. It was the last thing I expected to hear from Lavinia. Really? I asked cautiously. Absolutely, she exclaimed. We just want to be a part of this new chapter of your life. We could come to your islands, spend vacations together, help you set up your new home. A family should stick together, especially when new opportunities like this come along. Ah, that's it. They realized they couldn't convince me to abandon my plans, and now they were trying to fit in, gaining access to my new life, my money, my villa on the island. That's very nice of you, I said neutrally. But I've already organized everything. On January 3rd, I'll fly to St. Bart's to see the villa and possibly sign a preliminary purchase agreement. Then I'll go to Antigua to see the yachts. Everything is already booked and paid for. January 3rd? Thorne looked surprised. That soon? Yes, I don't see any point in putting it off. At my age, every day is precious. I looked straight at Lavinia, remembering what she'd said about how long I had left to live. But we could go with you, Lavinia exclaimed, to help with the selection with the paperwork. It's such a big deal after all. Don't worry, I have an excellent financial advisor and realtor. They'll organize everything professionally, I paused. Besides, I want this to be my own trip, my decision, my new life. Lavinia exchanged a glance with Thorne. Their plan was clearly not going as they had hoped. Mom, we're just worried about you, Thorne said. You'll be alone in a foreign country, among strangers. What if something happens? I'll be fine, Thorne. I'm not the helpless old woman you seem to think I am. I can still take care of myself. And besides, I'm planning on hiring a staff, a home health aide, maybe a personal secretary. People who will be there for me if I need help. But they'll be strangers, Mom. Not family. Sometimes strangers treat you better than family, I said quietly. At least they're honest about their motives. There was a heavy silence. Thorne looked hurt. Lavinia looked annoyed. The masks of friendliness and concern began to fall away. You're making a mistake, Emma, Lavinia said at last, no longer hiding her irritation. You'll be all alone on this island without us, without a family that really cares about you. Caring looks different, Lavinia, I replied calmly. Caring isn't when you only think of someone when you find out they have millions. And it's not when you offer your help just because you want access to their money. How dare you, she exclaimed, jumping up from her chair. After all we've done for you. And what have you done for me, Lavinia? I remained calm, which seemed to irritate her even more. When was the last time you took an interest in my life, my thoughts, my feelings? When was the last time you called just for fun, for no reason, no need? We've always cared about you, Thorne exclaimed. We invited you to holidays, helped with the house. You did the bare minimum, Thorne, what was considered necessary to look decent in the eyes of others. Of course we take care of Mom, mother-in-law. Of course she comes for Christmas. But you were never interested in me as a person. I was a function for you, an obligation, sometimes a handy babysitter when you needed to go somewhere. But never a person with desires, dreams, hopes of my own. Lavinia looked like she was ready to explode, but Thorne put a hand on her shoulder, holding her back. Mom, he began with obvious effort, let's not fight. We just want to be a part of your life to help you on this new journey. Is that such a bad thing? No, Thorne, it's not a bad thing. But I don't believe your motives are sincere. And I don't want to build a new life on lies and manipulation. I want to be honest, with myself and with others. I'm up from the table. Thank you for dinner. It was delicious. I'll call a cab. I can drive you, Thorne said. No, thank you. I prefer a cab. While I was waiting for the car, Lavinia couldn't take it anymore. You're going to regret this, Emma. You'll be alone and no one will come to your aid when you need it. I'm already alone, Lavinia, I replied. The only difference is that now I'll be alone in a beautiful place, with enough money to create the comfort I want, and with people who will maybe treat me better than my own family. The cab arrived and I hurried to the door, feeling immensely relieved that this evening was finally over. Thorne tried to contact me several more times over the next week, leaving messages and sending flowers. Lavinia didn't give up either. She even brought Edwin, hoping the sight of her grandson would soften me, but I remained adamant. I politely but firmly made it clear that my decision was final, and no amount of manipulation would make me change it. At the same time, I continued my preparations for the trip. I met with Alistair to sign the documents to change my will, and to make a power of attorney to manage my finances while I was away. Contacted Ms. Dupre to confirm our meeting on St. Bart's. Reviewed the pictures of yachts that the Antigua broker had sent and selected a few of the most interesting options to look at. Each step in this direction filled me with new energy and confidence. I bought new clothes for the trip: lightweight dresses, sun hats, comfortable shoes. I read about the Caribbean, studied local customs, and tried to learn a few phrases in French, which was common on St. Bart's. On the eve of my departure, I walked through the house, saying goodbye to places that had been a part of my life for so many years. The bedroom I'd once shared with Ray, the kitchen where we'd cooked together, the living room where Thorne had taken his first steps. It was the end of one chapter and the beginning of a new one. I didn't know if I would ever return to this house, but I was ready to let it go, like so much else in my life. On the morning of January 3rd, I was fully prepared to leave. The cab was due at 7 to take me to the Charlotte airport. I sat in a chair by the window, watching the sunrise and thinking about the journey ahead. About the villa by the sea, the yacht I would sail along the Caribbean coast, the new people I would meet, the new places I would see. This was my life, my choice, my freedom. And no one, not Thorne, not Lavinia, not anyone else, could take that away from me. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, truly free, and it was a wonderful feeling. The last day in Kannapolis was remarkably sunny and clear, as if nature itself approved of my decision to start a new life. I woke up at first light, full of energy and determination. Today was the day I had been waiting for and preparing for the past 2 weeks. The day I was leaving for the Caribbean. My suitcases were already packed, 2 large ones and 1 carry-on. They held everything I had decided to take with me into my new life. My favorite photos, a few books, documents, and the little bit of closet that would come in handy in the tropics. Everything else I either gave away or left in the house, which I decided to keep for now, but rent out through an agency. I walked slowly around the rooms, saying goodbye to the place that had been my home for decades. Every corner held memories. This was where Ray had read the Sunday papers, where little Thorne had taken his first steps, where his childhood drawings hung on this wall. But instead of sadness, I felt peace and a strange sense of rightness. It was as if the house was letting me go too, blessing me with a new beginning. After making myself one last breakfast in that kitchen, toast with jam and a cup of strong coffee, I sat down at the table and went through all the documents again. Tickets, hotel reservations on St. Bart's, realtor and yacht broker contacts, power of attorney for Alistair to manage my finances. Everything was in place. I felt not scared but determined and even a little excited, like a child before a long-awaited trip. The ringing of the doorbell interrupted my musings. I wasn't expecting visitors this early, and certainly not today. When I opened the door, I saw Thorne and Lavinia standing on the threshold with tense faces. "Mom, we need to talk," Thorne said without greeting. "Good morning, Thorne, Lavinia," I replied calmly. "Come in if you want, but I'm very busy. My plane is in 4 hours." They entered the house, and I noticed Lavinia glancing at the suitcases gathered against the wall in the hallway. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "So you're really leaving?" she said in a tone that was a mixture of disbelief and annoyance. "Yes, Lavinia. As I've told you repeatedly over the past 2 weeks," I turned to Thorne. "Would you like some coffee? It's the last cup I can offer you in this house." "No, thank you," he replied. "Mom, please, let's talk seriously. You can't just leave without discussing this with your family, without resolving all the issues." "Thorne," I interrupted him, "we've talked about this several times, and it's all taken care of. I'm renting the house through an agency. Alistair will take care of my finances. All the bills are on autopay. I'm an adult and I've taken care of everything." "That's not the point," Lavinia exclaimed, losing her temper. "It's about the money. The $7 million you're going to squander on some island and yacht instead of leaving it to your family. There it is. Finally, honestly, without pretense or manipulation. I was almost relieved. That's exactly the point, Lavinia. I looked her straight in the eye. The money. Not about taking care of me, not about family relationships, just the money. Mom, that's not fair, Thorne interjected. We do care about you. You've never lived alone in another country, much less on an island. What if you get sick? What if you need help? Thorne, I'll be living in one of the most luxurious places in the world, with top-notch medical care and a staff to take care of me. And unlike some, they will do so not because of an expectation of inheritance, but because I will pay them well. Lavinia flared up. You can't buy care, Emma. You can't just hire people and expect them to replace family. I could barely contain my laughter. But that's exactly what you're doing, Lavinia. Trying to buy my favor with fake care in the hope of getting money. The only difference is that I'll be honest about my expectations and you won't. You are insufferable, she exclaimed. 23 years I called you mother, tolerated your nagging, invited you to all the holidays, and now you accuse me of self-interest. Nagging? I raised an eyebrow. Lavinia, I never criticized you, not even when you forgot to invite me to Thanksgiving. Even when you asked me to cat sit, knowing I was allergic. Even when you used me as a free assistant at your business dinners. I always kept quiet, not wanting to cause trouble, not wanting to be a burden. And you know what? I'm tired of not talking. Mom, please, Thorne started, but I held up my hand to stop him. No, Thorne, it's time for me to say what I think now that we're having this conversation. 20 years I've been saving your father's money for you and your children. 20 years I've lived modestly, denying myself many things, planning to leave you an inheritance. And for all those years, you only thought of me when you needed something. You called once a week, visited once a month, and always for some purpose. To fix a faucet, to babysit, to watch the house. Never for nothing, never out of a pure desire to see me, to talk to me, to find out how I was living, what I was thinking, what I wanted. Thorne looked ashamed, but Lavinia did not stop. It's not fair. We've always cared about you. If you had said you needed more attention, why should I ask for attention from my only son? My voice remained calm, but inside I was seething. Why did caring for his mother have to be on demand and not a natural desire? We have our own lives, Mom, Thorne said quietly. Work, children, commitments. Everyone has a life, Thorne. And I'm entitled to mine, too. To spend my remaining years the way I want to, not the way that suits you. And I choose to live for myself. To enjoy what your father earned. Not leave it to people who only remembered I existed when they found out about the money. It's not fair, Lavinia exclaimed. That money is Ray's inheritance. It should stay in the family, pass on to the next generation. That's exactly what they'll do, Lavinia, I said. It will go to Ray's worthy heirs, young inventors who, like him, dream of changing the world for the better. I've created a foundation in his name that will support talent who don't have the financial means to realize their ideas. Isn't that the best legacy for a man who spent his life creating new things? Thorne looked puzzled, as if the thought had never occurred to him. But Lavinia looked at me with undisguised anger. You can't do this to us, not after all we've done for you. What have you done for me, Lavinia? I asked. You personally? Remind me. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, but couldn't say anything. Exactly, I nodded. Nothing, except for pretending to be nice when you needed something. And I'm not going to take it anymore. At that moment, the doorbell rang. The cab that was supposed to take me to the airport had arrived. I have to go, I said, getting up. If you really want to be a part of my life, my real life, without manipulation or ulterior motives, you know where to find me. You have my phone number and address. But I won't call you again. I won't impose. I won't ask for your attention. It's your choice now. I headed for the door, but Thorne grabbed my arm. Mom, please don't do this. Don't leave like this. I gently released my hand. I'm not leaving just like that, Thorne. I've been planning this for weeks, and my decision is final. But what are we going to tell people? Lavinia exclaimed. That your mother left you and went off to spend the family money on some island? You can tell them the truth, Lavinia, I said. That Emma Holloway, at 77, had decided to start living for herself. That she bought a house in the Caribbean and a yacht. That she's finally happy. Or you can make up some story that better fits your image of a caring daughter-in-law. I don't care. I opened the door and nodded to the cab driver, who had already gotten out to help with the luggage. Goodbye. Or goodbye. It's up to you. The driver loaded my suitcases into the trunk, and I got into the back seat, not looking back at Thorne and Lavinia, who stood on the doorstep with a look of confusion and anger on their faces. When the cab pulled away, I felt not sadness, but relief. It was as if I had shed the heavy weight I had been carrying all these years. The drive to the Charlotte airport took almost an hour. The familiar scenery of North Carolina, the place where I had lived all my life, was passing by outside the window. I thought about what I was leaving behind and what lay ahead. No, I didn't feel regret, only impatience and excitement. Everything went smoothly at the airport. Check-in, security check, boarding. I took my seat in first class, the first time I had ever traveled in such comfort. As the plane left the ground, I looked out the window at the dwindling city and smiled. A new chapter of my life had officially begun. The flight to St. Martin took a few hours, followed by a short flight on a private jet to St. Bart's. The entire journey felt like a dream, surrounded by luxury and attention from the staff, enjoying the views out the window and the feeling of freedom. When I finally set foot in St. Bart's, I was greeted by Isabelle Dupré, my realtor, an elegant middle-aged French woman with impeccable English and a warm smile. "Mrs. Holloway, welcome to St. Bart's." She shook my hand. "How was your flight?" "Delightful, thank you," I replied, breathing in the warm tropical air scented with the sea and flowers. "Great. I've arranged a transfer to the hotel for you. You can rest tonight, and tomorrow we will have a look at the villa. The owners are eagerly awaiting your decision." A luxurious air-conditioned car took us to the hotel, located on a picturesque beach. My room, or rather suite, overlooked the ocean. Standing on the balcony, I looked out at the turquoise water, the palm trees swaying in the breeze, the white sand, and thought about Ray. He would approve of my decision. He'd always wanted the best for me, always dreamed of showing me the world, but he hadn't had the time. "I'm here, Ray," I whispered. "I'm finally here." The next morning, Isabel picked me up from the hotel and we went to see the villa. When we pulled up to the gate, I held my breath. It looked impressive even in the pictures, but in reality, it exceeded my expectations. A whitewashed Mediterranean-style building with blue shutters and a tiled roof, surrounded by a lush tropical garden. A spacious terrace with a pool that looked like you could swim right out to the ocean below. A private walk down to the beach, hidden from view by the cliffs. Inside, the villa was just as beautiful. Bright, spacious rooms with high ceilings, exquisite furniture, artwork on the walls. The master bedroom overlooked the ocean, and I imagined waking up every morning to the sound of waves and seagulls. "What do you think, Mrs. Holloway?" Isabel asked, watching my reaction. "She's perfect," I said. "Absolutely perfect. Would you like to make an offer to the owners?" "Yes, at the price they were asking with the discount. And I'd like them to keep the furniture. It fits the house perfectly." Isabel smiled. "I think they'll be very pleased. We can sign the preliminary agreement today if you're ready." "I'm ready," I nodded. "More than ready." That same day we signed all the necessary papers and I made the first payment. The villa would be mine in 2 weeks, after the legal formalities were completed. In the meantime, I could continue my trip to the Caribbean as I had planned. The next day I flew to Antigua, where Marcus Holden, a yacht broker, was waiting for me. He showed me several options, but I immediately fell in love with the Sea Star, an elegant 22-meter yacht with 3 cabins, a spacious deck, and all the modern amenities. She wasn't new, 4 years since she was built, but the previous owner had kept her in perfect condition. "She's perfect for one person with a small crew," Marcus explained. "Maneuverable enough to explore small bays, but comfortable enough for long passages. And the price is very reasonable, $1,400,000, including all equipment." "I'll take her," I said without thinking. This boat was exactly what Ray wanted. Not too big, not too small, perfect for exploring the Caribbean. Marcus was surprised at my quick decision, but quickly got over his emotions and began to explain the next steps: checking the technical condition, paperwork, hiring a crew. You'll need at least a captain and a mechanic, he said. I can recommend some experienced people who know these waters well. I'd appreciate the recommendations, I replied. And I need staff for the villa on St. Bart's. A housekeeper, a cook, maybe a gardener. I have an acquaintance on St. Bart's who is in charge of recruiting staff for villas. I can put you in touch with him. The next 2 weeks flew by like a day. I traveled between the islands, sightseeing, meeting with potential yacht crew members and villa staff, solving endless organizational issues. But I felt no fatigue, only joy and excitement at the new experiences and opportunities. Finally, on January 15th, I officially became the owner of the villa on St. Bart's and the yacht Sea Star. That same day, I hired the staff: Jean, an experienced French housekeeper; Raphael, a talented chef from Martinique; Jose, a smiling gardener from the Dominican Republic. For the yacht, I chose Captain James, an Englishman with 30 years of sailing experience in Caribbean waters, and Michael, a mechanic from Trinidad. My new house quickly became a real home thanks to Jean's care in filling it with fresh flowers and cozy little things. Raphael cooked delicious meals, combining French techniques with local ingredients. Jose transformed the garden into a tropical paradise with blooming orchids and exotic fruit trees. Every morning I would wake up to the sound of the waves, have breakfast on the terrace overlooking the ocean, then spend the day exploring the island or sailing to neighboring islands. In the evenings, I would often sit on the terrace with a glass of wine, watching the sunset and reflecting on how my life had changed. In the middle of February, when I had already fully settled into my new life, I received a letter from Alistair. He reported that all my finances were in order, the house in Canapolis had been successfully rented out, and asked how I was settling in. At the end of the letter was a postscript: P.S. Your son has called several times inquiring about your address and phone number. I told him I would only give him this information with your permission. I thought for a long time before answering. Part of me wanted to completely cut off all ties to the past, to the people who only remembered me for the money. But the other part, the part that still remembered little Thorn, his first steps, his baby laughter, couldn't close the door completely. I ended up writing to Alistair. You can give Thorn my email address. If he really wants to contact me, he can write. But I don't promise to reply if I see his words as nothing more than an attempt at manipulation. A week passed, but there was no letter from Thorn. I wasn't surprised or upset. I was ready for it. My new life was filled with colorful experiences, new acquaintances, and the freedom to do what I wanted when I wanted. I was no longer a lonely old lady who was only remembered when necessary. I was Emma Holloway, a woman who, at 77, had found the courage to make a fresh start. One sunny March day, I stood on the deck of the Sea Star, looking out at the turquoise water and thinking about Ray, about how he had dreamed of having a boat like this, about how he wanted to show me these islands but didn't have time, how his genius, his hard work, his love for me had made this new life possible. Thank you, Ray, I whispered, looking out at the sparkling sea. Thank you for this gift. James, my captain, came on deck. Beautiful day for sailing, Mrs. Holloway. Would you like to sail to the island of St. John? There's a lovely cove there where there are hardly ever any tourists. I'd love to, James, I smiled. And please, call me Emma. Whatever you say, Emma, he smiled back. Shall I give the moorings? Moorings out, Captain. Full ahead. The boat slowly pulled away from the dock, picking up speed. I stood on deck, feeling the sun on my face and the wind in my hair, and I knew I had finally found my place in the world. A place where I am respected not for my money, but for who I am. A place where I can be myself without pretense or compromise. Canapolis, with its cold winters and cold hearts, is behind me. Behind was a life in which I was always in the background, always adjusting to others, always sacrificing my own desires for the sake of others. Ahead was the endless blue sea, new horizons, new adventures. At 77, I was finally free.